The room you've never entered. There is a room inside you that no one has ever entered. Not your family, not your friends, not even you. It's ancient, dusty, and locked. You pass by it every day. Sometimes you hear a whisper through the door, a voice that sounds eerily like your own, but older, wilder, more truthful. But the world has taught you to keep walking. That room is dangerous, they said. Stay with the others. Stay in the living room of certainty. Carl Jung once warned, the greatest danger to humanity is not an external enemy, it's what we refuse to face within. And that refusal, it becomes law, culture, government, religion, algorithms, echo chambers, everything we now obey. We have become experts at avoiding ourselves, and the price is terrifying. In trying to belong, we abandoned who we were. In trying to appear sane, we ignored the only thing that could truly heal us, our own chaos. This video is not a self-help guide. It's not a feel-good sermon. It's a descent, a flashlight, a map to that forgotten room. And once you see what's inside, you'll never see the world the same way again. Because that room, your true self, isn't just your salvation. It might be the last hope for a world hypnotized by conformity. We're not unlocking just a door. We're unsealing the soul. Section 1. The house built by others. You were born into a blueprint. Before your first cry echoed through the delivery room, the walls of your identity had already begun construction. Your name was chosen, your nationality assigned, your religion, values, fears, all waiting for you like furniture in a room you never decorated. And so, you moved in, smiling when expected, silent when told. You wore politeness like wallpaper, painted over rebellion with politeness, and hung achievements like family portraits to prove you belonged. But deep down, didn't you ever wonder, whose house is this? Jung called it the great inheritance of the collective, structures, ideas, and beliefs passed down not by wisdom, but by repetition. And repetition has a way of becoming truth. But what if the walls around you aren't walls at all, but illusions? Paper-thin stories glued together by your need to be accepted. Let me tell you a story. A man named Richard spent his life obeying every instruction given to him. Top of his class, married by 28, kids by 30, middle management by 40. But at 47, he stood in front of his house. Beautiful lawn, shiny car, wife and children asleep inside, and felt empty. Not sad, not broken, just missing, like a ghost had been living his life. That night, he did something unthinkable. He packed a single bag, left a note that read, "I'm going to find myself," and disappeared. He didn't hate his life. He just realized it had never been his. What Jung truly meant was this. We mistake inherited identity for discovered identity. But a name is not a self, a role is not a soul, and a house, no matter how grand, is still a prison if you didn't choose the door. So, let me ask you, have you ever looked around and felt like everything fits, except you? Have you ever smiled in a room and felt like it was someone else's teeth? What if you began dismantling that house, brick by brick, not to destroy your life, but to rebuild it with your own hands? But this is just the first room of the forgotten mansion. Because beyond the house you were given lies something more dangerous, more seductive, and far more invisible. Section 2, the room of echoes. You think you're thinking, but are you? Or are you simply echoing? Most people don't realize that the loudest voice in their heads isn't their own. It's a symphony of borrowed thoughts. What the crowd wants, what the algorithm feeds, what the news screams, what the church demands. And slowly, that inner whisper, the one from your forgotten room, gets drowned in applause that isn't even for you. Mass psychology is the most beautiful lie ever told. It doesn't come with chains, it comes with celebration. It flatters you. You're one of us, it says. You belong here. And who doesn't want to belong? But the cost of that belonging is silent. Your questions, your doubts, your rebellion, all sacrificed to maintain the illusion of peace. Jung didn't fear crowds because they were violent. He feared them because they were seductive. Picture this. A young woman named Osha grows up in a tight-knit community. Everyone smiles the same. Everyone believes the same. And she plays along. Until one day, while volunteering at a shelter far from home, she meets a man who gently asks her, "But what do you believe?" No one had ever asked her that before. She laughed at first. Then she cried. She couldn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because she had never been allowed to know. The true danger of the collective mind is that it doesn't just silence your truth, it makes you forget you ever had one. Like standing in a room full of mirrors where all the reflections smile, except you've forgotten which one is real. Jung warned us, the masses are never wrong because they never think. They repeat. And what they repeat becomes religion, law, identity. But none of it came from within. So, let me ask you, how many of your opinions are truly yours? How many of your dreams weren't planted by someone else? And if the answer terrifies you, good. That's the sound of the echo fading. Because next, we're going to look at the mirror. Not the one that flatters you, the one that shows what's underneath. Section 3, the mirror that distorts. Stand in front of the mirror. Really look, but not at your skin, not your clothes. Look past the surface. Now ask, is the person staring back you, or a carefully rehearsed mask sculpted from approval, shame, and survival? You see, the mirror doesn't always tell the truth. Sometimes it reflects who the world wants you to be. And if you stare long enough, you forget who you were before it mattered. Carl Jung believed that society doesn't just pressure us, it shapes us. Like soft clay pressed into molds. These molds become our roles: the polite daughter, the strong father, the obedient citizen, the reasonable adult. But roles are performances, and performances require costumes. And one day, the mask no longer comes off. Imagine this. A young man named Leo was always told he was so mature. He wore that compliment like armor. At work, he solved problems calmly. With friends, he offered advice. But inside, Leo was on fire, angry, curious, messy. But none of that matched his reflection. You're stable, they said. You're wise. So, he buried the chaos. Until one night, drunk and alone, he smashed a mirror, not out of rage, but desperation. "Show me something real," he whispered. What Jung really wanted us to see was this. When the mirror becomes your master, your soul becomes your hostage. You begin performing for the reflection instead of the reality. You begin believing applause is the same as connection. You confuse being liked with being whole. So, let me turn the mirror toward you. Have you ever said something you didn't believe just to maintain an image? Have you ever ignored your intuition because it didn't match your brand? What if that mask of perfection is the very thing strangling your becoming? Because what we see isn't always what is, and what comes next will force us to face what we've hidden, not from the world, but from ourselves. Section 4, the closet where shadows live. There's a closet inside your mind. You've been stuffing things into it for years: shameful memories, forbidden desires, irrational fears, unspoken anger. Every time something didn't fit the role you were playing, you shoved it in and slammed the door. And maybe you even forgot, but the shadow never forgets. Jung called it the shadow self, not evil, not demonic, but simply unacknowledged. It's the parts of you you were told not to be, the feelings you were punished for having, the truths you feared would make you unlovable. But suppressing the shadow doesn't make you pure, it makes you dangerous, to yourself and to others. Think of Clara. She was always praised for her sweetness, never raised her voice, never pushed back. She believed conflict made her ugly. But when she got fired unfairly from a job she'd given everything to, something inside her snapped. She didn't yell, she didn't cry, she vanished for 3 days. When she returned, she couldn't explain what had happened, only that someone else had taken over. That someone had rage, grief, power. That someone was her. What Jung wanted us to realize is that when we deny the shadow, it doesn't disappear. It grows teeth. And eventually, it erupts, not with control, but with vengeance. The person who says, "I'd never do that," is the most dangerous, because they have never met the part of them that could. So ask yourself, what have you buried because you thought it made you bad? What if the darkness isn't the enemy, but the buried map to your wholeness? And what if opening that closet doesn't destroy you, but makes you finally real? Because just beyond that door lies something even more deceptive. Not darkness, not fear, but fire disguised as truth, a force that burns under the illusion of righteousness. Section 5, the bonfire that burns your name. There's a bonfire in every society. It glows with warmth, calls with music, promises belonging. People dance around it, chant in unison, throw pieces of themselves into the flames, beliefs, doubts, individuality. And somewhere along the way, they toss in their names, their real ones. Not the ones on their ID, but the names their soul answered to before the world got involved. Jung understood this. Collective ideologies are seductive not because they offer truth, but because they offer certainty. A ready-made identity, a righteous cause, and best of all, a common enemy. They say, join us. We'll tell you who you are, what matters, and who to blame. But the moment you accept their script, you're no longer the author of your story. You become a character in someone else's myth. In 1930s Germany, crowds didn't rise overnight. It began with fear, then unity, then fire. One identity, one voice, one truth. And people cheered as books burned, not realizing their minds were next. Because once you give up the right to question, you give up the right to be. Let's bring this closer. Think of social media. You post the wrong opinion, get burned. You stay silent, get erased. The bonfire is still burning. It just traded wood for shame. And the crowd still dances, mistaking moral outrage for moral clarity. What Jung meant was this. The moment we believe our group, our belief, our side is the only way, we've already struck the match. Because the fire doesn't care if it's lit by a tyrant or a hashtag. It only knows how to consume. So I ask you, have you ever stayed quiet just to keep your place in the circle? Have you ever cheered something you didn't fully believe, just to belong? What if the warmth of the bonfire is the very thing turning your truth to ash? Because next, we'll enter the most dangerous room of all. Not the one built by others, not the one filled with shadows, but the one where the script was written, the one that convinced you to be silent in exchange for peace. Section 6, the script you didn't write. You were handed a script before you could speak. Lines like, good girls don't get angry, real men don't cry, success means security, faith means never doubting. You memorized them, repeated them, and were rewarded with smiles, praise, approval. But no one ever told you you could write your own lines. And by the time you realized, the play was already halfway through. Carl Jung believed that most of us are not living, we're performing. We've mistaken conditioning for character, obedience for identity. And what's worse, we defend the script we never wrote. We pass it down like sacred text, teaching our children the same lines that muted us. We call it tradition, we call it culture, but sometimes it's just unprocessed pain wearing a polite face. Picture Maya. She grew up in a family of doctors. Her path was set before she could dream her own. She played the part well. White coat, framed degree, proud parents. But at night, she wrote poetry under a fake name, afraid of being found out. What if they see the real me, she'd whisper. But one day, her secret poem was published, by accident. She braced for the fallout, but instead, her father looked her in the eye and said, I didn't know you had a voice like this. And for the first time, she spoke without a script. What Jung really wanted us to grasp is this. The unconscious life is not freedom. It's captivity with decoration. Until you question the lines you're living, you'll mistake applause for authenticity. So, let me ask you, what rules have you followed without knowing who wrote them? What stories about yourself are you still playing, simply because no one told you to stop? What if, tonight, you began rewriting the lines, not out of rebellion, but remembrance? Because next, we'll enter a place where logic reigns and soul is forgotten. A temple built on data, facts, and measurements, but with no place for mystery. The shrine of science, and the ghost it left behind. Section 7, Gods of Glass and Algorithm. We traded altars for screens, robes for lab coats, prophets for professors. But make no mistake, our hunger for certainty didn't vanish. It just updated its interface. Today, we kneel before gods of glass and algorithm, believing what is measurable is what is meaningful. And yet, our souls still ache. Why? Jung warned that science, when idolized, becomes its own mythology. Not because it's false, but because it forgets what it can't explain. Science dissects, categorizes, predicts. But the soul, it doesn't yield to spreadsheets. You can't scan for sorrow. There's no MRI for meaning. And yet, in our obsession with proof, we've grown allergic to mystery. Think of Adam, brilliant engineer, rational, proudly skeptical. When his wife died suddenly, he found no comfort in equations, no solace in numbers. He searched papers, studied grief models, listened to logic. But one night, sitting alone, he whispered to the empty room, "Where did she go?" It was the first time he had asked a question science couldn't answer, and it broke him open. What Jung meant was this. We didn't stop needing transcendence. We just stopped calling it sacred. But the hunger remains, that quiet longing for something deeper, older, truer. Science gave us tools, but not truths. It built skyscrapers but left the soul homeless. And now, in 2025, we ask AI to define love. We let algorithms suggest who we are. We worship convenience, efficiency, performance, and feel more lost than ever. Because while our machines got smarter, our questions grew silent. So I ask you, have you replaced wonder with calculation? Have you silenced your intuition because it didn't make sense? What if your deepest truth doesn't need to be proven, only remembered? Because just beyond this cold brilliance lies something even more deceptive. A force that doesn't challenge your ego, but feeds it. It wears a halo. It speaks in shoulds. And it convinces you that if you obey, you're good. Section 8. The devil in the virtue. Not all evil looks like fire. Sometimes it wears a smile, it bakes cookies, it volunteers, it quotes scripture. It blends in. Jung understood something chilling. The most dangerous evil is not done in darkness. It's done in the name of light. Collective morality, when left unchecked, becomes a weapon. Not because people intend harm, but because they believe they're right. And when you're sure you're righteous, you stop questioning yourself. You project all shadow outward. They are the problem. We are the solution. History proves it again and again. Genocide, censorship, war, all justified by some version of the greater good. Imagine a small town, tight-knit, devout. A new teacher arrives with different ideas, gentle, curious, non-traditional. The town doesn't argue with her. They pray for her. They host meetings. For the children's safety, they say. She is shamed, ostracized, eventually forced out. No one yelled, no one attacked, but everyone agreed because they believed their discomfort was proof of her sin. What Jung revealed was this: when we suppress our own shadow, we desperately need someone else to carry it for us. We scapegoat, demonize, dehumanize, and all the while, we feel holy. The devil doesn't need pitchforks when he has public approval. In today's world, this happens not in churches or courts, but in cliques. You like the right post, you're safe. You share the wrong thought, you're cast out. Cancel culture, tribal morality, public shaming, they all ride on the back of virtue. And yet, rarely do they ask, what part of me am I refusing to see? So, let me ask you, have you ever judged someone not because they were wrong, but because they triggered your unhealed part? Have you ever felt righteous rage and never paused to ask, is this shadow mine? Because in the next room, we'll meet the judges you didn't vote for. The voices in your head you mistake for truth. And we'll see how the courtroom of your mind was constructed, not for justice, but for control. Section 9, the judges in your head. You are on trial every day, and the courtroom is inside your mind. The gavel falls when you say too much. The jury winces when you dare to rest. The verdict? Not enough. Too much? Unworthy. But who appointed these judges, and why do they speak with your voice? Carl Jung believed that many of our most brutal inner critics aren't really ours. They are internalized voices, parents, teachers, religious leaders, societal norms, all installed like courtroom fixtures in the architecture of our psyche. You don't remember letting them in, but they're there, watching, weighing, whispering. You should be better by now. Let's talk about Jordan. Smart, driven. Every mistake felt like a public execution, only no one was watching but her. One day, she forgot a minor detail at work. The entire day collapsed into shame. Not because her boss yelled. He didn't. But the judge inside her did. You're a fraud, it hissed. Everyone will see. That night, she stared in the mirror, trembling, and whispered, "Who keeps punishing me?" What Jung pointed out is this. We mistake internalized authority for conscience. But they're not the same. One guides, the other punishes. And until you challenge those inner judges, you'll obey verdicts from ghosts. In our world today, this trial never ends. Social media magnifies it. Algorithms track your failures. Culture rewards constant performance. And slowly, the court becomes your home. You learn to sit in the defendant's chair, even when no one is accusing you. So, let me ask you, whose voice do you hear when you fail? Who told you your worth must be earned, your truth must be justified, your rest must be productive? What if you could fire the judges, not out of rebellion, but because they were never qualified to rule your life? Because just outside this courtroom is another layer of pain, not punishment, not shame, but the quiet sickness of always pretending to be well, the condition of fitting in at the cost of feeling whole. Section 10, the neurosis of normal. We praise it, we chase it, we sacrifice dreams for it, but what if normal is the real sickness? Jung saw what most never dared to say. Neurosis doesn't come from being broken. It comes from pretending to be whole in a world that rewards masks. People aren't going mad because they're strange. They're going mad because they've buried every part of themselves that doesn't fit the mold. Imagine Kai. Every day he smiles, performs, responds with perfect timing. He has a good job, polite friends, a stable partner. But inside, a quiet panic grows. Not loud enough to scream, but enough to make him wake at 3 a.m., wondering, is this it? He goes to therapy, hoping for answers. But what he discovers terrifies him more than his anxiety. Nothing is wrong with him, except that his soul has been suffocating under the weight of normality. Jung would say, the more you conform to what society calls sane, the more insane you become, if that normal doesn't reflect who you really are. And today, that's more relevant than ever. In 2025, normal means productivity over peace, filtered happiness, silence over truth, and if you dare to question the script, they'll ask if you're okay. As if your pain is the problem, not the environment that made you mute it. This is why so many suffer in silence. Depression that doesn't match their Instagram. Anxiety hidden beneath deadlines. Rage swallowed because it isn't nice. But the psyche doesn't forget. What is repressed returns, often in ways we don't recognize until it explodes. So I ask you, have you ever felt like a stranger in your own life? Do you ever feel that your success only deepens the emptiness? What if your symptoms aren't signs of failure, but signals that your deeper self is trying to awaken? Because in the next chapter, we'll step behind the performance. We'll meet the mask you've worn for so long. You may have forgotten there was ever a face underneath it. Section 11, the persona and the prison. You crafted it well. Your persona, the smile in tense rooms, the charm in awkward moments, the intellect, the coolness, the spirituality. Whatever earned you praise, affection, survival, you wore it. And maybe you forgot it was a mask at all. That's the danger of the persona. When it fits too well, you think it's skin. Carl Jung coined the term persona not as condemnation, but as warning. It is the mask we wear to face society, to function, to belong. But over time, we confuse adaptation with identity. We don't just play the role, we become it. And anything that contradicts the role, we exile. Into shadow, into silence, into sickness. Picture Naomi. She was the strong one. Her friends called her their rock. Her family leaned on her for everything. Even when her world was crumbling, she'd say, I'm fine. Until one day, during a casual lunch, someone asked, but what do you need? Naomi froze. No one had asked that before. Worse, she didn't know the answer. Her whole life had been a role, a persona polished to perfection. But now, the role was cracking, and she realized she had no script beneath it. Jung's deeper point was this. The persona is necessary, but when it becomes absolute, the soul decays behind its mask. It's not about removing the persona. It's about remembering who's beneath it, and choosing when to wear it, not letting it wear you. And in 2025, personas are currency. Online, you curate. At work, you perform. In relationships, you manage perception. But if your real self never gets stage time, the mask eventually collapses. And when it does, the fragments are sharp. So I ask you, who would you be if no one was watching? If applause didn't exist, if criticism couldn't touch you, would you still act the same? What if freedom isn't found in shedding your persona, but in no longer mistaking it for your soul? Because beyond the mask lies a paradox, safety that suffocates, a wall that comforts then cages. And next, we'll look at how comfort can become the most seductive prison of all. Section 12, walls made of safety. Safety is seductive. It feels like a soft blanket, like warm lights in a dark forest. It calms you, protects you, whispers, you're okay here. But what happens when that safety becomes a wall? When the thing you trust most begins to limit how far you'll go? Jung warned us, the soul doesn't thrive in safety. It thrives in truth. And truth, more often than not, is uncomfortable. Think of Omar. He had a routine, a circle of friends, a predictable job. No drama, no risk, no depth. And yet every night, he'd lie awake with a strange ache, a feeling like a bird with wings. Inside a cage it had built itself. He wasn't unhappy. He was untouched. Safe, yes, but numb. Jung knew that our instinct for security often masks a deeper fear, the terror of meeting ourselves. Real growth doesn't happen inside the fortress. It happens when you step outside, into uncertainty, into confrontation, into the mirror of your own discomfort. But modern culture doesn't teach this. In 2025, comfort is marketed as enlightenment. Breathe, manifest, avoid toxicity. But sometimes the most toxic thing is your refusal to face your own unrest. Comfort can be holy, rest is sacred. But when comfort becomes avoidance, it becomes a prison lined with soft pillows. You stop asking questions. You silence inner conflict. You trade breakthrough for background noise. And you call it peace. So, let me ask you, are you building your life around who you are or who you're afraid to be? What fears have you disguised as boundaries? What if the life you say is just right is actually just safe enough to never wake you up? Because beyond this velvet prison is the battlefield of your own mind, where two versions of you have been fighting for years. One who obeys, one who rebels, and neither is the enemy. The real war is older, and it begins behind your eyes. Section 13, the war behind your eyes. No one sees it, but it's always there. The war, not between good and evil, but between the version of you that submits and the one that screams. One wants peace at any cost. The other wants truth, no matter how loud. And the battlefield, it's your mind. Jung didn't see inner conflict as failure. He saw it as necessary. The psyche is not a smooth surface. It's a layered terrain of opposing forces. The self and the shadow, the mask and the mirror, the inherited and the authentic. When these forces clash, we call it anxiety, depression, indecision. But what if those symptoms are not signs of weakness, but proof that your soul is still alive and fighting? Meet Elijah. By day, he's an executive, calm, composed, rational. But at night, he paints, abstract, violent, unexplainable. His therapist asked why he hides it. He answered, "Because I don't know who that person is." But here's the truth. Both men are Elijah. The conflict isn't the problem. Pretending it doesn't exist is. Jung's warning was simple. The most dangerous man is the one who believes he is only one thing. Because when you repress the rebel, he becomes a saboteur. When you suppress the poet, he becomes a ghost. But when you listen to them, integrate them, they become allies. Integration is not about harmony. It's about wholeness. The war ends when both sides are seen, valued, and heard. In our time, especially now, people are praised for being centered. But often, what we call balance is just suppression in disguise. Stoicism that silences emotion, logic that avoids intuition, religion that buries questions. And so, the war continues. Not because the enemy is strong, but because the commander won't listen. So ask yourself, what part of you have you silenced to stay sane? What voices do you hear before you sleep, and why are you afraid to answer them? What if peace doesn't come from choosing a side, but from inviting both to the table? Because the next room isn't a battlefield, it's a pattern, a loop, one that devours identity with promises of progress. And unless you see it for what it is, it will consume you too. Section 14, the pattern that consumes the soul. It starts small, a new job, a new goal, a self-improvement plan, a better morning routine. A book on high performance. At first it feels like evolution, but slowly, subtly, something strange happens. You don't feel more alive. You feel more managed, polished, automated, like you've become a product optimized for output, not a person searching for meaning. Carl Jung warned that one of the greatest dangers of modern life is mistaking patterns for progress. Just because you're moving doesn't mean you're evolving. Just because you're efficient doesn't mean you're free. The pattern whispers, do more, be more, achieve more. But it never tells you why. Imagine Lainey. She built the perfect life. Habit trackers, 5 a.m. workouts, clean eating, affirmations. From the outside, she glowed, but inside, hollow. She couldn't remember the last time she felt wonder. Joy had become data. Presence had become performance. She wasn't living. She was executing. Jung saw this as a soul-deep disease, the automation of the self. It happens when we follow paths not because they speak to us, but because they're praised. When we measure our worth in likes, in steps walked, in goals hit. When the inner voice becomes an echo of someone else's schedule. And in 2025, this pattern is stronger than ever. Algorithms reward predictability. Social systems reward obedience. Even spirituality is gamified. Morning rituals, breathwork scores, meditative streaks. But the soul isn't a system. It's a storm. And when we treat it like software, we kill what makes us human. So I ask you, are you following a pattern or answering a calling? Have your routines brought you closer to yourself, or only to approval? What if the loop you're stuck in isn't helping you evolve? It's helping you disappear. Because the next room is deeper still. It isn't yours alone. It's ancient, dark, shared. A realm where your mind merges with something older than thought. Where your private fears were born long before you ever had a name. Section 15. The abyss of the collective unconscious. Beneath your thoughts, beneath your memories, beneath even your personal trauma, there's something older. Vast, shared, silent. Jung called it the collective unconscious, a psychic ocean where every human being is secretly connected, where the myths of all time swim beneath our conscious minds like forgotten gods. You don't remember joining it, but you dream its symbols, you fear its archetypes. And sometimes, when the world feels strangely familiar or disturbingly wrong, you are brushing against its tides. This is not woo-woo mysticism. This is the inheritance of the soul. You were born into stories you never heard, of the hero, the betrayer, the mother, the tyrant, the trickster. They live inside you, shaping your instincts, influencing your choices, haunting your relationships. They are not personal, they are primordial. Let me tell you about Raphael, a man who kept having dreams of drowning, not in water, but in faces. Familiar and strange, always pulling him under. No therapist could explain it. Until one day, reading an old myth, he found the same dream, in a story written 2,000 years ago. He realized, this isn't just my fear, it's humanity's fear of losing itself in the many. He wasn't crazy, he was remembering. What Jung meant is this: the unconscious isn't just your personal basement. It's a cave system that links every soul. And when we don't know that, we project ancient patterns onto modern life. We fall in love with strangers because they remind us of the anima. We fear leaders who trigger the shadow. We fight wars not over resources, but over mythic identities we mistake for truth. And today, the collective unconscious is being stimulated like never before. Movies, memes, virtual realities, digital archetypes. We are no longer telling stories. We are living inside them. And if we're not aware, we'll be possessed by them. Puppets in a myth we never agreed to join. So, let me ask you, have you ever reacted in a way that felt too big, too primal? Have you ever felt like your pain didn't belong to just you? What if your breakdowns aren't personal failures, but echoes of something ancient needing to be seen? Because in the next room, we won't find symbols. We'll find the door, the one only you can open, the one that was sealed the moment you chose comfort over curiosity. It's time to find the key. Section 16, the secret door only you can unlock. Somewhere inside you, there's a door no one else can open. Not your parents, not your partner, not your therapist, nor your teacher. They can stand beside you, they can whisper encouragement, but the handle, it only responds to your hand. And behind that door is not salvation, it's confrontation. With who you were before, the world told you who to be. Jung believed that the journey of individuation, the path to becoming truly yourself, begins the moment you stop looking outward for instructions. Not rebellion, not escapism, but inner excavation, finding the self beneath the conditioning, the spark beneath the soot. It doesn't begin with answers. It begins with asking dangerous questions. What do I want, really? What if I stopped pretending? What if I didn't fear rejection? These questions don't lead to quick fixes. They lead to fire, to grief, to resurrection. Take Mira, a woman who spent her entire life playing roles: mother, wife, daughter, caretaker. One day, walking through a museum, she stood before a painting of a faceless woman and burst into tears. Not because it was sad, but because it was her, unseen, undefined, unclaimed. That moment was her key. She left the museum and began drawing again, something she hadn't done since childhood. It wasn't a career shift, it was a soul shift. The door is real, not in the physical world, but in the structure of your psyche. And behind it isn't perfection, it's integration. All the parts of you buried, all the desires you delayed, all the truths you were too afraid to name. And when you open it, the world doesn't suddenly change, but you do, and that's what changes everything. In this age of distraction, this door is often drowned in noise. Notifications, demands, expectations. But it doesn't disappear. It waits, patiently, silently, and sometimes it creaks just enough for you to feel its presence in the quiet hours of the night. So I ask you, what would happen if you stopped knocking on other people's doors and turned the handle on your own? What if the truth you've been chasing was never out there, but sealed within? Because in the next chamber, we face the trap that makes all the rest repeat. The cycle, the spiral, the pattern that pulled you back even after awakening, and it's time to break it. Section 17, the loop that never ends. You thought you escaped it. The role, the mask, the collective lies. You had your awakening, your breakthrough, your moment of clarity. But then, days later, maybe weeks, you find yourself back in it, playing nice, holding back, forgetting. It's maddening. I thought I was done with this, you whisper. But the loop laughs, because it never ends until you understand it. Carl Jung knew, the psyche is not linear. It's cyclical, spiral-shaped. You don't just break through once and rise forever. You return, you fall back, you repeat. But each time, if you're conscious, you return with more awareness. You descend again, but deeper. And in that depth is transformation. Let me tell you about Theo. After years of people-pleasing, he found his voice in therapy. He quit his soul-crushing job, started painting, felt free. But 6 months later, he was stuck again, this time in a toxic relationship. How did I end up here? He asked. The answer wasn't failure. It was familiarity. The loop returned not because he was weak, but because the next layer needed healing. What Jung revealed is this. Your wounds are layered. Like a spiral staircase, each step you climb revisits an old pain, but from a wiser place. The loop is not your enemy. It's your teacher, but only if you stop seeing return as regression. In 2025, culture sells the fantasy of once and done. One mindset shift, one breakthrough, one transformation retreat. But the soul doesn't work that way. It calls you back again and again to witness what you once ignored, to love what you once judged, to reclaim what you once feared. So I ask you, are you frustrated by your return or humbled by what it still wants to show you? What if the loop is not a trap, but a spiral staircase toward your truest self? Because now, as we approach the final door, we enter the room you were never meant to forget. The one that has been calling you from the beginning. And once you step inside, there is no going back. Section 18, the forgotten room, awakens. You stand before it now, not metaphor, not symbol, reality. The forgotten room. You've felt it in dreams, in déjà vu, in the ache behind your smile. It's the place you've been circling all your life without knowing. And now, the door creaks open. Inside, there's no light switch, just silence, thick, ancient, pulsing with everything you've buried. The memories you edited, the desires you labeled wrong, the truths you whispered only in your most private moments. They're all here, waiting. Jung believed that the self, the truest core of your being, is not something you build. It's something you remember. Like rediscovering a room in your childhood home that no one ever mentioned, yet somehow, you knew it existed. And in that room, you don't find a version of yourself you created to impress the world. You find the one who watched quietly, patiently, through every performance, the one who never left. Let's return to Clara. Years after her quiet breakdown, she stopped trying to fix herself. She stopped chasing wholeness as if it were a prize. She began listening, truly listening, to the parts of her that were chaotic, strange, wild. She painted without purpose, cried without shame, walked without destination. And one morning, while drinking coffee on her porch, a thought came. Not loud, not dramatic, but certain. I'm home. Not because she found herself, but because she stopped running from herself. This is what the forgotten room gives you. Not happiness, not perfection, but alignment. It's not the end of pain, but the end of self-betrayal. And once you've been here, even briefly, the outside world looks different. The masks fall easier. The judges grow quiet. The loop becomes a spiral you walk with grace. And maybe, just maybe, you become one of the few who lives awake, who doesn't need to prove or preach or escape, who simply is. So I ask you now, can you feel it? That whisper that's followed you your entire life? The room is not a destination. It's your origin, and it's open. Because in our final chapter, we face the one truth that remains after the masks, the fire, the echoes, and the war. A truth that cannot be unseen. The question is, will you carry it with you? Section 19, now that you've seen it. There is no going back, not really. You can pretend. You can smile through the same conversations, return to the old roles, repost the filtered version of your life. But something inside you has shifted, irreversibly. Because once you've stepped into the forgotten room, once you've felt the weight of your own undiluted truth, you cannot unknow it. Jung never promised peace. He promised wholeness. That's the terrifying gift of individuation. You don't become better. You become real. And real is messy. Real grieves and laughs at the wrong moments. Real speaks before it's ready. Real walks into rooms no one else sees. Real isn't easy, but it's yours. The world will still pull you, with likes, with praise, with fear, with belonging. It will hand you fresh masks, new judges, upgraded scripts. It will ask you to forget again. And you might for a while. That's okay. But the key is already in your pocket now. You know where the door is. You know what it feels like to be you, even if just for a moment. Take Mateo. After 2 decades of chasing status, he walked away. Not because he hated success, but because he finally saw the cost. He didn't burn it all. He didn't move to the mountains. He simply started saying no when he meant no. He let silence speak louder than approval. And when asked what changed, he smiled and said, "I remembered myself." That's the truth you now carry. You're not lost. You're just distant. And that distance can be closed again and again and again. The room is patient. Yourself is patient. But the longer you wait, the more the echo becomes your voice. So I ask you, now that you've seen it, will you return? Will you speak from the room, create from it, love from it? Or will you lock the door again and pretend the world outside is all there is? Because this journey is not about becoming something new. It's about becoming someone ancient, the you who was always there. And as we close this journey, a new one begins. Because the self is not a destination, it's a relationship. And the room is not just yours, it's the world's last hope against the hypnosis of the crowd. Call to action. The room is waiting. You've stepped through the echoes, walked past the bonfires, dismantled the mask, and stood face to face with the war behind your eyes. You've descended into the collective dream, cracked the loop of performance, and unlocked a door that can only be opened from the inside. Now you stand in the forgotten room, not as a visitor, but as its rightful inhabitant. And the question that lingers isn't, was it real? It's, what will I do now that I remember? You've just lived through 20 awakenings, not chapters, not tips, not lessons, but thresholds. From the house built by others to the devil in the virtue. From the mirror that distorts to the secret door only you can unlock. Each one was a mirror or a match. Some showed your reflection, others lit your fire. But here's the truth. The forgotten room was never locked. It was only ignored. And now that you've seen it, your task is not to burn down the world. It's to live in it unhypnotized, with eyes wide open, with your soul intact. So I invite you, no, I challenge you. Drop a comment below and name the room that hit you hardest. Not for me, for you, for the others watching who think they're alone in this descent. And if your voice shakes, if your truth trembles as you type, it means you're finally not echoing, you're remembering. And if this journey stirred something in you, share it. Not because it's content, but because it's a map. Somewhere out there, someone is still pacing the hallways of a house they didn't build, and they need to know there's a room waiting. Remember this. The world will offer you many things, roles, rewards, rhythms, but only you can give yourself back your name. The forgotten room isn't behind you now. It's beneath you. Walk like you never left it.